Woman meets Jesus in heaven. His message about humanity stuns all. NDE. What message is this? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. Sarah rushed through the crowded streets of her small town, juggling her purse, a bag of groceries, and her buzzing phone. The day had been long, filled with back-to-back meetings at work, a last-minute errand for her elderly neighbor, and the nagging feeling that she was falling behind on everything. She glanced at her phone screen, 5 missed calls from her mother and a dozen emails demanding immediate attention. With a sigh, Sarah muttered, "I'll call her back later," as she stuffed the phone into her bag. As she approached her car, the evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the town. Despite the serene beauty of the sunset, Sarah felt anything but calm. Her mind raced with worries about bills, deadlines, and the endless demands of life. It felt like she was running a race she could never win. Sliding into the driver's seat, she turned the ignition and headed home, her thoughts swirling in a chaotic storm. She barely noticed the quiet streets or the familiar landmarks passing by. All she could think about was the pressure, the unrelenting weight of expectations, both from others and herself. Halfway through her drive, Sarah's phone buzzed again. She instinctively reached for it, glancing at the screen for just a second. It was enough. In that split second, her car veered slightly into the oncoming lane. The blaring sound of a horn jolted her back to reality. She turned the wheel sharply, but it was too late. A loud crash echoed through the air as her car collided with another. The impact sent her spinning, her body jerking violently as glass shattered and metal crumpled. Time seemed to slow, every second stretching into an eternity. She felt a searing pain in her chest, and then everything went black. When Sarah opened her eyes, she was no longer in her car. The first thing she noticed was the absence of pain. Her body felt weightless, free from the heaviness that had plagued her for as long as she could remember. She looked around, her breath catching in her throat. She was standing in a field of soft golden light, the air filled with a warmth that seemed to seep into her very soul. The field stretched endlessly in every direction, dotted with vibrant flowers that seemed to glow from within. A gentle breeze carried the faint sound of music, notes so pure and beautiful that they brought tears to her eyes. For the first time in years, Sarah felt truly at peace. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice trembling. As if in response, a figure appeared in the distance, walking toward her with a steady, graceful stride. The figure was cloaked in white, their presence radiating an indescribable sense of love and tranquility. Sarah's heart pounded as the figure drew closer, and she realized it wasn't just anyone, it was an angel. The being's face was serene, their eyes filled with a kindness that seemed to see straight into her soul. "Sarah," the angel said, their voice soft yet powerful. "You are safe. There is nothing to fear." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she tried to process what was happening. "Am I dead?" she asked hesitantly. The angel smiled gently. "Not yet. But you are in a place beyond the earthly realm. You have been brought here to see what lies beyond and to understand the purpose of your life." The angel extended a hand, and Sarah instinctively took it. The moment their hands touched, a surge of warmth spread through her, filling her with a sense of safety and love. The angel led her across the field, toward a shimmering golden light in the distance. As they walked, Sarah noticed that the colors around her seemed more vibrant than anything she had ever seen on Earth. The grass beneath her feet felt softer than silk, and the air was filled with a sweet fragrance that was both familiar and otherworldly. As they approached the light, Sarah saw a grand city rising before her. The buildings were made of gold, their surfaces gleaming with a brilliance that seemed to come from within. Towers stretched high into the sky, their spires piercing through clouds that glowed with a soft, ethereal light. The streets were paved with gemstones, each step producing a gentle, musical chime. Sarah was awestruck. "This is heaven," the angel said, their voice filled with reverence. "A place of infinite love, peace, and understanding." Sarah's heart swelled with emotion. She had always believed in heaven, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of it. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've never felt anything like this before. The angel nodded. You are here for a reason, Sarah. There is someone who wishes to speak with you. They continued walking until they reached a grand hall at the center of the city. The hall was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Its walls were adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to tell the story of humanity, each detail glowing with a soft golden light. Massive doors stood before them, their surfaces shimmering like liquid gold. The angel pushed the doors open, and Sarah stepped inside. The hall was filled with an indescribable warmth, and at its center was a golden throne. Seated upon the throne was a figure who immediately commanded her attention. His presence was both powerful and gentle, his face radiating compassion and wisdom. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she realized who he was. Jesus, she whispered, falling to her knees. Rise, Sarah, Jesus said, his voice calm and soothing. There is no need to bow. You are here because you are loved. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she stood, her heart overflowing with emotion. I don't understand, she said. Why am I here? Jesus smiled, his eyes filled with understanding. You have been given this moment to see what lies beyond your world and to carry a message back to humanity. A message of love, unity, and purpose. Sarah stood before Jesus, her heart racing with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. The warmth radiating from him enveloped her like a protective embrace, calming her trembling hands. She searched his face for answers, unsure of what to say. His eyes, deep and filled with an infinite love, held her gaze. Sarah, Jesus began, his voice carrying a tone of compassion that melted her fears. You have spent much of your life searching for meaning, for connection, for peace. You are not alone in this. Many of my children walk this path, feeling burdened by the weight of the world. His words resonated deeply within her. She thought of the long days, the sleepless nights, the constant pressure to meet everyone's expectations. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "It feels like too much sometimes. Like no matter what I do, it's never enough." Jesus stepped down from his throne and approached her, the hem of his white robe brushing the glowing floor. He reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You are enough," he said, his voice steady. "Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. You were created in love, and that love is your purpose." The simplicity and power of his words took Sarah's breath away. "But the world doesn't feel like this," she said, gesturing to the radiant beauty of heaven. "It feels broken. People are so divided. There's so much pain and anger." Jesus nodded, a flicker of sadness crossing his face. "The world was made with love, but humanity often forgets. Fear, pride, and misunderstanding create walls that separate my children. Yet, within every heart lies the capacity for love, for kindness, for unity." He extended his hand, and a vision appeared before them, as though the air itself had become a canvas. Sarah saw a bustling city filled with people. The vision zoomed in on a man helping an elderly woman cross the street, a young boy sharing his sandwich with a hungry classmate, and a doctor comforting a scared patient. Each act of kindness sent out ripples of light that touched those around them, spreading warmth and hope. "This is what humanity is capable of," Jesus said. "Every small act of love carries the power to transform the world. These moments, though they may seem insignificant, are the building blocks of my kingdom on earth." Sarah watched the glowing ripples spread, her chest tightening with emotion. "It's beautiful," she said. "But why does it feel so hard to live like this all the time?" Jesus sighed softly, his expression one of understanding. "Fear often clouds the hearts of my children. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. This fear creates barriers that block the flow of love. But the truth, Sarah, is that love is always stronger than fear." The vision shifted. This time, Sarah saw images of division, arguments over trivial matters, people turning their backs on one another, acts of cruelty that left deep scars. The light in the vision dimmed, replaced by shadows that seemed to spread endlessly. "This is the alternative," Jesus said solemnly. "When love is forgotten, fear and pride take its place, and the world grows darker. But even in the darkest moments, light can break through. It only takes one heart willing to shine. Sarah felt a lump in her throat as she stared at the contrasting images, the light and the darkness, the love and the division. "What can I do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "How can one person make a difference in all of this?" Jesus smiled, his warmth filling the space between them. "Start where you are. Love the people around you. Show kindness in the smallest of ways. And share the truth you have learned here, that every soul matters, and every act of love counts." He gestured again, and another vision appeared. This time, Sarah saw herself. She was back on Earth, but everything was different. She was speaking to a group of people, sharing her story of what she had seen and learned. The crowd listened intently, their faces lighting up with hope and understanding. From there, the vision expanded, showing those people going out into the world, spreading the message of love and unity in their own unique ways. The ripple effect grew, touching countless lives. "This is your purpose, Sarah," Jesus said. "You have been chosen to carry this message back to Earth. Your voice will spark change, and your actions will inspire others to see the beauty in themselves and in one another." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she watched the vision unfold. "But why me?" she asked. "I'm just an ordinary person. There are so many others who are stronger, braver, wiser." Jesus placed both hands on her shoulders, his gaze steady. "You are not ordinary, Sarah. No one is. You have a heart that longs for connection, a soul that seeks truth, and a willingness to listen. That is enough. Trust in me, and I will guide you." The golden hall seemed to grow brighter, the air around them humming with an energy that filled Sarah with both peace and determination. "I want to do this," she said, her voice firm despite the tears. "I want to share this message. But how will I know what to say? How will I find the strength?" Jesus smiled, a gentle light radiating from him. "I will be with you always. When you speak from love, the words will come. When you act from kindness, the strength will follow. Trust in the light within you, for it is my light." Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with a mix of humility and resolve. She didn't know what the journey ahead would hold, but she felt ready to face it. "Before you go," Jesus said, "there is one more thing I wish to show you." He raised his hand, and the vision shifted once more. Sarah saw the faces of people she had known throughout her life. Friends, family, even strangers she had crossed paths with. Each face glowed with a unique light, and she realized that every one of them had touched her life in some way, shaping who she was. "These connections," Jesus said, "are the threads that bind humanity together. Every interaction, no matter how small, leaves an imprint. Never underestimate the power of a kind word, a helping hand, or a compassionate heart." Sarah gazed at the faces, her chest tightening with gratitude. She thought of her mother, who had always believed in her neighbor, who had taught her the value of generosity, and even the stranger who had once smiled at her on a particularly hard day. Each moment mattered. Sarah's heart swelled with gratitude as she gazed at the glowing faces in the vision. Each connection felt like a piece of a puzzle, forming the picture of her life. She turned to Jesus, her voice trembling with emotion. "I never realized how much every moment matters," she said. "Even the smallest ones." Jesus nodded, his expression tender. "Every moment is an opportunity, Sarah. Every interaction is a chance to share love, to lift someone's spirit, to leave the world a little brighter than it was before. That is the essence of your purpose, not just yours, but humanity's." The vision dissolved, leaving them once again in the golden hall. Sarah felt a deep sense of clarity and purpose, but also a flicker of doubt. "What if I fail?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I forget everything you've shown me?" Jesus smiled, his presence radiating reassurance. "Failure is part of the journey, Sarah. It is through mistakes that you learn, grow, and discover your strength. And you will not be alone. My light will guide you, even when the path feels uncertain." Sarah took a deep breath, allowing his words to settle in her heart. The love and wisdom he shared felt like a flame igniting within her, filling her with a resolve she had never known. "I'll do my best," she said, her voice steady. "I'll carry this message and do everything I can to make a difference." Jesus stepped closer, his gaze filled with a mixture of love and gravity. "Remember, Sarah, the light you carry is not just for you. It is meant to be shared, to inspire, to heal. Trust in it and you will find your way." With those words, Jesus gestured toward the golden doors at the far end of the hall. They opened slowly, revealing a shimmering pathway that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon. Sarah felt a pull toward the path, a gentle yet firm invitation to return to where she had come from. "Your time here is not yet complete," Jesus said. "You have much to do and many lives to touch. But one day, you will return, and we will meet again." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she realized what was happening. She didn't want to leave this place of love and peace, but she understood that her purpose was not yet fulfilled. She turned to Jesus one last time, her voice trembling. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." Jesus reached out, placing his hand over her heart. "Go in love, Sarah, and know that you are never alone." The next moment, Sarah felt a rush of warmth and light, as though she were being gently carried through a tunnel of golden energy. The sound of music surrounded her, growing fainter as she moved further away from the ethereal realm. Slowly, the warmth faded, replaced by the sensation of her body. The weight of gravity returned, and with it, the sounds of earth. She opened her eyes to find herself in a hospital room. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air, and the steady beeping of a heart monitor echoed softly in the background. A nurse stood nearby, her expression shifting from shock to relief as she realized Sarah was awake. "You're back," the nurse said, her voice filled with awe. "We thought we'd lost you." Sarah blinked, her mind struggling to process the transition from heaven to earth. Her chest ached, and her body felt heavy, but her heart was light, filled with the love and wisdom she had just experienced. "How long ago was I gone?" she asked, her voice weak. "Almost 10 minutes," the nurse replied. "But it felt like forever. You stopped breathing after the accident. It's a miracle you're here." As Sarah lay in the hospital bed, the memories of her time in heaven flooded back. Every word Jesus had spoken, every vision he had shown her, was etched into her soul. She felt an overwhelming need to share what she had seen, to ensure that the message wasn't lost. Her family arrived soon after, their faces etched with worry and relief. Her mother rushed to her side, gripping her hand tightly. "Sarah," she said, tears streaming down her face, "we thought we'd lost you." "I'm okay, Mom," Sarah said, her voice soft but steady. "I'm here for a reason. I have something I need to tell you." Her mother and the rest of her family exchanged confused glances but leaned in as Sarah began to speak. She recounted everything: the golden fields, the angel, the grand hall, and, most importantly, her encounter with Jesus. Her words were filled with emotion, and her family listened intently, their eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and awe. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment. Finally, her mother spoke, her voice trembling. "Sarah, what you're saying, it's incredible. Do you really believe it happened?" Sarah met her mother's gaze, her expression unwavering. "It wasn't a dream. It was real. And I have to do something with it. I can't keep this to myself." Over the following weeks, as Sarah recovered from her injuries, she began sharing her story with others. At first, it was just close friends and family, but word spread quickly. People were drawn to her account, not just because of its miraculous nature, but because of the profound message it carried. She spoke of love, unity, and the power of small acts of kindness, her words igniting a spark in those who heard them. Sarah's home became a gathering place for people seeking hope and guidance. They came with questions, doubts, and fears, and Sarah listened to each one with compassion. She didn't claim to have all the answers, but she shared what she had learned, that love was the greatest force in the universe and that every person had the power to make a difference. One day, as Sarah prepared to speak at a local community center, she looked out at the crowd that had gathered. There were people of all ages and backgrounds, united by a desire to hear her message. She felt a surge of gratitude, knowing that her near-death experience had given her this incredible opportunity to inspire change. When she took the stage, her voice was steady and filled with conviction. "I'm not here to tell you what to believe," she began. "I'm here to share what I've seen and learned. And what I've learned is that every single one of us has the power to change the world, not through grand gestures, but through love, kindness, and understanding. Every small act matters. Every connection counts. And together, we can create something beautiful. The crowd erupted into applause, their faces glowing with hope. As Sarah looked out at them, she felt the presence of Jesus, his light guiding her every step. She knew her journey was just beginning, but she was ready to face it with love and purpose. In the months that followed, Sarah's story spread far beyond her small town. Invitations poured in from community centers, churches, and even local news outlets. People were eager to hear her account of meeting Jesus and the profound message he had shared about humanity. Sarah, though overwhelmed at times, embraced every opportunity to speak, knowing the importance of her mission. One evening, she was invited to speak at a large community event hosted at the town's civic center. The auditorium was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation. Sarah stood backstage, clutching the edges of her notes, her heart pounding. Despite her growing confidence, moments like these still made her nervous. She glanced at her mother, who had accompanied her to the event, and saw the reassuring smile that had always calmed her. "You'll be amazing," her mother said. "Just speak from your heart, like you always do." Sarah nodded, taking a deep breath. "Thanks, Mom. I just hope the message reaches everyone who needs to hear it." When her name was announced, the crowd erupted into applause. Sarah stepped onto the stage, the bright lights illuminating her as she approached the podium. She took a moment to scan the audience, seeing faces filled with hope, curiosity, and longing. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Sarah began, her voice steady. "I want to start by saying that I'm just like you. I'm not a preacher or a theologian. I'm a person who's been blessed with an experience that changed my life, and I feel compelled to share it with you." She recounted her near-death experience, describing the golden fields, the angel who guided her, and her meeting with Jesus. As she spoke, she noticed the way the audience leaned forward, hanging on to every word. She described the visions Jesus had shown her, the acts of kindness that sent ripples of light into the world, and the contrasting images of division and darkness. "When Jesus showed me those visions," Sarah said, her voice growing more emotional, "I realized how much power we have, each of us, to make a difference. It's not about grand gestures or changing the entire world overnight. It's about the small things we do every day. A kind word, a helping hand, a moment of understanding. These are the things that create ripples of love." The crowd erupted into applause, and Sarah paused, letting the energy settle before continuing. "I know it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the state of the world. It's easy to think, what can one person do? But Jesus showed me that even the smallest actions matter. They matter because they inspire others. And when we inspire others, the ripples grow." After her speech, the audience rose to their feet, their applause thunderous. Sarah felt a surge of emotion as she stepped back from the podium, tears streaming down her face. She had poured her heart into her words, and the response affirmed that the message was reaching people in ways she could only have dreamed of. As the event ended, people lined up to speak with Sarah, sharing their own stories of struggles, doubts, and moments of faith. One woman, clutching a tissue, approached Sarah with tear-filled eyes. "Your story gave me hope," she said. "I've been feeling so lost, like nothing I do matters. But now I see that even the little things I do can make a difference." Sarah reached out and took the woman's hands in hers. "They do matter," she said softly. "More than you know. And so do you." The weeks following the event were a whirlwind. Sarah's story gained traction online, with videos of her speeches spreading across social media. People from all over the country reached out, sharing how her words had inspired them to look at their lives differently. Some wrote about reconnecting with estranged family members, others about performing random acts of kindness for strangers. Each message filled Sarah with gratitude, a reminder of the purpose she had been entrusted with. But with the growing attention came new challenges. Sarah faced skepticism and criticism from some who doubted her story or dismissed her as seeking attention. At first, the negativity weighed heavily on her, stirring doubts and fears she thought she had left behind. She turned to her mother for guidance one evening, tears brimming in her eyes. "Mom, what if they're right?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if I'm not strong enough to keep doing this?" Her mother pulled her into a comforting embrace. "Sarah, remember what Jesus told you. The light you carry isn't for everyone to understand, and that's okay. It's for those who are ready to see it. Focus on them, and trust that you're doing exactly what you're meant to do." Her mother's words stayed with her, giving her the strength to push through the doubt. She reminded herself that the message wasn't about her. It was about love, unity, and the power of small acts to change the world. As Sarah continued her work, she felt a pull to take her message beyond speaking engagements. She began writing a book, pouring her experiences and the lessons she had learned into its pages. The process was both cathartic and challenging, as she revisited the emotions of her near-death experience and the profound truths Jesus had shared with her. The book, titled Ripples of Love: A Journey Beyond and Back, was published a year later. It quickly became a bestseller, reaching people across the globe. Readers wrote to Sarah, sharing how her words had inspired them to make changes in their lives and communities. The ripples of love she had spoken of were spreading further than she could have ever imagined. One day, Sarah received an invitation to speak at an international conference on compassion and unity. The event brought together leaders, activists, and thinkers from around the world, all united by a shared vision of creating a kinder, more connected world. Sarah felt both honored and humbled by the opportunity, knowing that her journey had brought her to this moment. As she stood on the stage, looking out at the diverse faces in the audience, she felt a deep sense of purpose. "What unites us," she began, "is far greater than what divides us. We are all threads in the same tapestry, woven together by love and the potential to create something beautiful. It starts with each of us, and it starts today." The applause that followed was deafening, a testament to the power of her words. Sarah left the stage knowing that the light she had been given was continuing to shine, touching lives in ways she could never fully comprehend. As Sarah's journey unfolded, the impact of her message reached places she had never imagined. The book's success and her growing platform brought invitations from schools, organizations, and even world leaders who wanted to hear her story and learn from the insights she had gained in heaven. Despite her busy schedule, Sarah remained grounded, remembering the simplicity of the message Jesus had given her, to love and to share that love with the world. One day, she received a letter from a small community in a remote part of the country. The letter was handwritten, its tone heartfelt and humble. It came from a teacher named Mr. Peterson, who ran a school in an underserved area. He explained how Sarah's book had inspired him and his students, many of whom came from difficult backgrounds. "Your words have brought hope to children who thought the world had forgotten them," he wrote. "If there's any way you could visit our school, it would mean the world to us." Sarah read the letter twice, her heart swelling with emotion. The idea of traveling to such a remote place seemed daunting, especially with her packed schedule, but something about the letter called to her. She decided to make the trip. When she arrived at the small town, she was greeted by Mr. Peterson and a group of students who held handmade signs that read, "Welcome, Sarah," and "Thank you for inspiring us." Their smiles were wide, their excitement palpable. Sarah felt a lump in her throat as she stepped out of the car and embraced the moment. The school was modest, its walls adorned with student artwork and quotes about hope and perseverance. Mr. Peterson introduced Sarah to his class, a group of children ranging in age but united by their curiosity and enthusiasm. "You've already changed our lives through your words," Mr. Peterson said. "Now they want to hear from you in person." Sarah smiled at the students, her voice warm and inviting. "I'm so honored to be here," she said. "And I want you to know that every single one of you has the power to make a difference, no matter where you come from or what challenges you face." She spent the day with the students, sharing her story and answering their questions. They asked about her experience in heaven, about what Jesus was like, and about how they could make their own lives meaningful. Sarah answered each question with sincerity, emphasizing the importance of kindness and connection. One student, a quiet boy named Jacob, raised his hand hesitantly. "Do you think Jesus sees us?" he asked softly. "Even if we're not important or famous?" Sarah knelt down to his level, her gaze steady and kind. "Jacob, Jesus sees every single one of us," she said. You don't have to be famous or important to matter to him. You matter just as you are, and everything you do makes a difference. Jacob's face lit up, his shy smile revealing the impact of her words. Sarah felt her heart swell, knowing that moments like this were the reason she had been given this mission. As the day ended, the students surprised Sarah with a gift, a scrapbook filled with letters and drawings they had made to thank her. Each page was a testament to the hope and inspiration her message had brought to their lives. Sarah hugged the book tightly, tears streaming down her face. "This means more to me than you'll ever know," she said. "Thank you for reminding me why this journey is so important." Sarah's visit to the school stayed with her, a reminder of the profound ripple effects of love and kindness. She continued to travel, speak, and write, her message evolving but always rooted in the simple truth she had learned in heaven, that humanity's greatest power lies in its capacity to love. One evening, as Sarah prepared for another event, she received a call from her mother. The warmth in her mother's voice was unmistakable. "Sarah, I wanted to tell you something," her mother said. "You've changed so many lives, but do you realize how much you've changed mine?" Sarah's heart tightened. "What do you mean, Mom?" "I've always believed in you," her mother said, her voice trembling with emotion. "But seeing the way you've embraced this mission, the way you've faced every challenge with love and courage, it's inspired me to be better too. I've started volunteering at the community center, helping people in small ways. It feels so good to give back." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. "Mom, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you." Her mother laughed softly. "I should be the one saying that. You've reminded me that it's never too late to make a difference." As Sarah reflected on her mother's words, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Her journey had not only transformed her own life but had sparked change in those closest to her. The ripples of love she had spoken about were growing, touching lives in ways she could never have imagined. She decided to include these personal moments in her next speech, knowing that they would resonate with others. When she took the stage the following week, she shared the story of her mother's newfound purpose, emphasizing that no act of kindness was ever too small. "My mother's decision to volunteer may seem like a small thing," Sarah said, her voice steady. "But it's not. It's a reminder that change starts with one person, one choice, one act of love. And that act can inspire countless others." The audience erupted into applause, their faces reflecting the impact of her words. Sarah felt the presence of Jesus once again, his light guiding her as she continued her mission. As Sarah's mission grew, so did her understanding of the profound simplicity of the message she had been entrusted to share. It wasn't about grand speeches or monumental achievements. It was about reaching people where they were, one heart at a time, and showing them that they mattered. The ripple effect of her story extended far and wide. Letters poured in from people who had been inspired by her book or her speeches. Some shared how they had mended broken relationships, others spoke of newfound hope, and still others detailed how they had started spreading kindness in their own communities. One letter, in particular, stood out to Sarah. It came from a man named Henry, a retired factory worker who lived in a small rural town. Henry wrote about how he had felt invisible and purposeless after retiring. But after reading Sarah's book, he realized that his life still had meaning. "I started helping my neighbors," he wrote. "Fixing fences, mowing lawns, little things like that. At first, I thought it was just a way to keep busy. But then I noticed how much it meant to people. And I realized that even in my quiet little corner of the world, I could make a difference. Thank you for helping me see that." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she read Henry's words. She wrote back immediately, thanking him for sharing his story and encouraging him to keep spreading light in his community. In the months that followed, Sarah began hosting workshops and retreats, creating spaces where people could come together to learn, share, and grow. These events became a powerful way to deepen the connections she had been building and to equip others with the tools to carry the message forward. One of the most memorable retreats took place at a serene lakeside retreat center. People from all walks of life gathered, united by a shared desire to live more intentionally and spread kindness. Sarah led the group in discussions, activities, and moments of quiet reflection. On the final evening, the group gathered around a fire pit under a starlit sky. Sarah asked each person to share one thing they would take away from the retreat. The responses were deeply moving. A single mother spoke of finding strength in her vulnerability. A young man shared how he had found forgiveness for someone who had hurt him, and an elderly woman expressed gratitude for discovering that it was never too late to make a difference. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, she looked around at the faces illuminated by the flickering firelight. "This," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "is what Jesus showed me. That we are all connected, that our actions, no matter how small, matter deeply. You are each a ripple in this world, and together, you create waves of love." As the retreat ended, Sarah felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She knew that every person who left that lakeside would carry the light of the experience with them, touching lives in ways she might never see. And that was enough. But even as Sarah continued her work, she knew her journey was far from over. There were still challenges to face, doubts to overcome, and moments of growth ahead. One evening, as she sat in quiet reflection, she found herself speaking aloud to Jesus. "Am I doing enough?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Am I living up to the purpose you gave me?" The room was still, but Sarah felt an unmistakable warmth in her heart, the same presence she had felt in heaven. It was as though Jesus were reminding her of his words, "Every act of love counts. Trust in the light within you." She smiled, the doubt fading. She didn't need all the answers. She just needed to keep walking the path before her, trusting that each step would lead her closer to fulfilling her purpose. Years later, Sarah stood on the stage of a global summit, her hair streaked with silver but her spirit as vibrant as ever. The audience stretched before her, a sea of faces from every corner of the world. She had been invited to speak about her journey, the ripple effects of her message now spanning continents. As she began to speak, her voice carried the same warmth and conviction that had defined her mission from the start. "When I met Jesus," she said, "he didn't give me a list of instructions or a grand plan. He gave me a simple truth, that love is the most powerful force in the universe. And he entrusted me, and all of us, with the responsibility to share that love." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the crowd. "I want you to know that you are part of this story. Every one of you has the power to create ripples of love, to touch lives in ways you may never fully understand. And together, those ripples can change the world." The applause that followed was thunderous, but Sarah's focus wasn't on the noise. It was on the faces in the crowd, the light in their eyes, the hope that radiated from their expressions. She felt the presence of Jesus once again, his love enveloping her as if to say, "Well done." That evening, as Sarah sat quietly in her hotel room, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the golden fields of heaven to the bustling streets of earth, from the whispers of doubt to the roar of applause, every step had been guided by the light within her. She closed her eyes, a smile spreading across her face. "Thank you," she whispered, her words a prayer of gratitude. "For trusting me with this, for walking with me every step of the way." And as she drifted off to sleep, she felt the warmth of that divine presence once more, a gentle reminder that her story and her purpose would continue to unfold.